Jamal Richards, the successful Black CEO of Titan Fitness, had always prided himself on building his luxury gym chain on the foundations of inclusivity, respect, and top-tier training. But recently, unsettling rumors had begun to surface about one of his flagship gyms. Whispers in quiet corners and furtive conversations among members spoke of discrimination, reports that Black members were being treated differently, ignored by trainers, given less assistance, or even subtly discouraged from signing up for premium memberships. Determined to uncover the truth behind these allegations, Jamal devised a bold plan. He decided to go undercover in his own gym to experience firsthand the environment his members faced. For this mission, he knew he had to shed every symbol of authority. He traded his tailored suits and expensive accessories for a modest, everyday look. No designer brands, no flashy watches, just plain gym clothes that would allow him to blend in as any regular client. On the day of his secret visit, Jamal walked into Titan Fitness with a mix of trepidation and resolve. The moment he stepped through the polished glass doors, he felt the familiar buzz of activity, the clanging of weights, the rhythmic pounding of treadmills, and the low hum of conversations. Yet beneath this seemingly vibrant atmosphere, Jamal sensed an underlying tension that hinted at something amiss. Determined to observe without being noticed, he navigated the gym with the careful precision of someone who knew every corner, yet was intent on seeing it through fresh eyes. He approached the front desk, adopting the unassuming air of a new member eager to start his workout routine. As he mingled with the crowd, his eyes were constantly scanning, observing how trainers interacted with the members, particularly those who looked like him. Before long, Jamal's intuition was confirmed. A trainer, whose indifference was masked behind a veneer of professionalism, approached him with a cold demeanor. When Jamal asked for some guidance with his workout routine, expecting the usual enthusiastic support the gym was known for, the trainer's response was curt and dismissive. Not only did the trainer barely acknowledge him, but he outright refused to provide any coaching or advice, a stark departure from the attentive service Jamal had envisioned for his brand. In that moment, the weight of the rumors settled heavily on Jamal's shoulders. It wasn't just a one-off incident, it was a glaring symptom of a deeper issue festering within the walls of his once proud establishment. As he quietly noted every detail, the dismissive tone, the body language, the subtle exclusion, Jamal felt a mix of disappointment and determination. This was not a case of mere miscommunication, it was a betrayal of the values upon which Titan Fitness was built. Jamal's undercover mission had turned into a quest for accountability and reform. With every observation, he gathered evidence that would force a long-overdue reckoning within his company. In that gym, hidden behind the guise of a regular member, Jamal resolved to confront the discrimination head-on and restore the dignity and integrity that Titan Fitness promised to all its patrons. The journey toward change had just begun, and Jamal was ready to lead the charge. Jamal walked through the sleek glass doors of Titan Fitness, his heart steady yet alert. From the very first step, it was clear that something was off. The front desk staff barely glanced his way, a fleeting nod at best, while greeting the white members with genuine enthusiasm and warm smiles. The contrast was palpable, and Jamal felt the sting of exclusion immediately. As he moved further into the gym, the atmosphere that had once symbolized excellence and inclusivity now felt cold and unwelcoming. Jamal noticed that several trainers were busy assisting other members, their attention fixated on clients who bore a strikingly different appearance from his own. Their conversations were friendly, their gestures open, and their eyes attentive. Yet, when Jamal sought even the smallest bit of acknowledgement, he was met with silence or dismissive glances. It was as though he had become invisible, an unwanted presence in a place he had helped build. Determined not to let his feelings of isolation overpower his mission, Jamal headed towards the training area. He needed to understand the extent of the bias and how deeply it was embedded in the gym's operations. As he approached the area where the head trainer worked, he was met by Chad Walker, a man known for his cocky demeanor and air of arrogance. Chad's reputation preceded him. He had a way of making people feel inferior with a single sentence, and Jamal was about to experience it firsthand. "Hey, I'd like to sign up for personal training," Jamal said, his voice calm and measured despite the rising tension. Chad barely looked up from his phone as he replied in a tone that bordered on condescension. "You sure? This gym is high-end. Training isn't cheap." His words were laced with an insinuation that questioned Jamal's ability to invest in such an elite service. Jamal's jaw tightened, but he kept his cool. He knew that reacting impulsively would only play into the negative dynamic. "I can afford it," he said simply, meeting Chad's gaze steadily. At that moment, Chad snickered, a sound that was both mocking and dismissive. Shaking his head as if it were an obvious mistake to even consider Jamal as a candidate for personal training, Chad responded, "I don't think you'd be a good fit here." His tone was final, leaving no room for further discussion. For a brief moment, the noise of the bustling gym seemed to fade away, replaced by the crushing weight of disrespect. Jamal stood there, processing the blatant discrimination. In that instant, every unacknowledged greeting, every ignored gesture from the staff, all converged into a singular experience of exclusion. The gym that once promised equality and excellence had betrayed its core values, revealing a hidden bias that cut deeper than any physical blow. Jamal's mind raced, not with anger, but with a clear determination to uncover the truth behind these practices. This encounter wasn't just a personal slight, it was a symptom of a larger systemic problem. Every dismissive word from Chad was a reminder that despite all the outward appearances of success and luxury, Titan Fitness had lost its way when it came to treating all its members with equal respect. With a heavy heart but a resolute spirit, Jamal decided that his undercover mission had only just begun. He needed to document every instance of disrespect, every subtle act of exclusion, so that he could address the issue head-on and enforce the standards of inclusivity he had always championed. Today, he was treated like an outsider in his own gym. Tomorrow, he vowed to transform it back into the welcoming, respectful community it was meant to be. As Jamal walked away from the counter, the sting of instant disrespect lingered, but so did a renewed sense of purpose. He would not allow discrimination to define Titan Fitness. Instead, he would let the truth drive the change needed to uphold the very values that his company was built upon. Jamal stood firm, his eyes never leaving Chad's as he pushed back against the blatant dismissal. "I just want to train. Why is that a problem?" he asked, his voice steady and laced with a determination that belied the hurt he felt. The gym around them buzzed with the usual clamor of clanging weights and upbeat chatter, but in that moment, the space between them seemed to narrow into a spotlight on the injustice unfolding. Chad rolled his eyes in a gesture that spoke louder than words. He stepped closer, invading Jamal's personal space with an air of condescension. "Look, man," Chad began, his tone dripping with casual arrogance, "this isn't the kind of gym where people just walk in off the street and get one-on-one time with our trainers. We have standards here." His words hung in the air, a cold reminder that, in Chad's eyes, Jamal did not belong among the elite clientele that Titan Fitness prided itself on. Before Jamal could muster a response, Chad pivoted sharply, his attention immediately captured by a young white man waiting nearby. With a smirk and a flourish that suggested he was showcasing a prized possession, Chad offered the man a premium training package. "You see that guy? He looks like someone who belongs here," Chad said, his tone smug as he gestured toward the young man, whose smile exuded both confidence and the privilege of being immediately accepted. "You? Maybe try one of those budget gyms across town." The final words cut through the noise of the gym like a razor, leaving no doubt about Chad's bias. The world seemed to slow for Jamal as he absorbed every syllable of Chad's dismissive remark. In that instant, he knew with absolute clarity everything he needed to know. This wasn't just about one trainer's unprofessional behavior. It was a systematic exclusion that had seeped into the very fabric of his own company. The realization stung sharply. The values of inclusivity and respect that he had built Titan Fitness upon were being undermined by prejudice and arrogance right under his nose. Determination flared in Jamal's eyes. Despite his outward calm, a storm of righteous indignation churned within him. He had spent years nurturing a brand that promised excellence, equality, and empowerment through fitness, yet here he was in his own gym, witnessing firsthand the very discrimination he had fought so hard to eradicate. The weight of the moment pressed upon him, heavy and undeniable. It wasn't merely a personal affront, it was a betrayal of every promise Titan Fitness had ever made to its members. As Chad's smirk faded into the background, Jamal took a slow, deliberate breath. He realized that this encounter was not just a confrontation, it was a turning point. In refusing to accept the status quo, Jamal was compelled to act. His mind raced with the implications of what he had witnessed, the blatant favoritism, the subtle exclusion, and the unyielding arrogance of those in power had all converged to form a damning portrait of discrimination. It was a portrait that could no longer be ignored. In that defining moment, Jamal's resolve crystallized. He understood that he must expose the truth and hold those responsible accountable. His undercover mission was no longer just about gathering evidence. It had become a crusade to reclaim the values that Titan Fitness was meant to represent. Jamal's inner voice, long silenced by the routine of corporate leadership, now roared with the need for justice. The gym's pristine facade had been tarnished by a culture that allowed bias to flourish, and he was determined to restore it. The young man who had been offered the premium package continued to chat animatedly with Chad, oblivious to the charged tension that now filled the space between him and Jamal. Every smile, every gesture of approval from the gym staff toward that man was a silent affirmation of the system's skewed priorities. And every dismissive glance cast in Jamal's direction reinforced the painful reality that, even in a place built on high standards, prejudice could thrive. As Jamal turned to leave the counter, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. This refusal, this singular act of discrimination, had changed everything. It was a stark indicator that the changes he needed to implement would be more extensive and more painful than he had ever anticipated. Yet, it was also a call to action. He would not let Titan Fitness become complicit in such injustice. With every step he took, Jamal vowed to dismantle the bias that had rooted itself in his company and rebuild it on the true principles of equality and respect. In that moment, Jamal's undercover mission took on a profound new meaning. It was no longer just about verifying rumors. It was about igniting a transformation, a revolution of inclusivity from within. And as he left the front desk behind, Jamal knew that the refusal he had just endured was the spark that would eventually lead to a long-overdue reckoning. Just as Chad was about to turn and walk away, Jamal's hand shot into his pocket. With calm precision, he pulled out his phone and, without missing a beat, made a call. "Tell the staff to meet me in the main training area. Right now," he said, his voice steady and authoritative. The request echoed in the background of the busy gym, its clear command slicing through the ambient noise of clanging weights and murmured conversations. Chad, caught off guard by the sudden interruption, couldn't help but laugh. "Oh, what? You calling your mom?" He jeered, his tone dripping with condescension. The laugh, hollow and mocking, barely masked the growing tension in the room. Within minutes, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Gym managers, trainers, and staff began to rush in toward the main training area. Their faces, etched with concern and curiosity, told a story of a sudden disturbance in what was supposed to be a well-oiled, harmonious machine. The normally bustling space, where members pushed through their workouts with determined focus, now pulsed with an undercurrent of uncertainty. The regional director, a man whose presence typically conveyed calm oversight, entered the room next. His eyes darted around, clearly nervous as he tried to grasp the situation unfolding before him. "Mr. Richards, what's going on?" he asked, his voice betraying both confusion and apprehension. At that moment, even Chad seemed to freeze, his earlier arrogance evaporating into palpable discomfort. Mr. Richards?" he stuttered, unable to hide the shock in his voice. The playful smirk that had defined his demeanor was gone, replaced by a dawning realization that things were spiraling out of his control. With an unwavering gaze, Jamal stepped forward into the center of the room. The air was thick with anticipation, every eye fixed on him. In that charged moment, the room held its collective breath, waiting for the revelation that was about to shatter the status quo. Jamal's presence, once that of a mere gym member in casual attire, now commanded the space with undeniable authority. "That's right, I own this gym," Jamal announced, his voice resonating with the power of his words. The declaration was simple, yet it carried a weight that no one in the room had expected. It was a revelation that cut through the pretensions of the establishment, a reminder of the true ownership and the values that Titan Fitness was meant to embody. Gasps filled the room as the reality of Jamal's statement sank in. The gym staff, who had come to expect orders from a chain of managers and regional directors, were now confronted with the undeniable truth of Jamal's identity. Their expressions shifted from shock to dismay, and in some cases, even guilt. The staff who had once nodded unthinkingly at Chad's dismissive commands now looked at him, and at the gym's operations, with new eyes. In that charged silence, the implications of Jamal's words began to unfold. It was not merely a matter of corporate hierarchy or chain management. It was a direct challenge to the very culture that had been allowed to fester within these walls. Jamal's revelation was a call for accountability, a demand that every member of the Titan Fitness family, from the top down, should uphold the principles of inclusivity and respect. As murmurs of disbelief rippled through the room, Jamal's calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the chaos of emotions around him. He had not come to cause trouble for the sake of it. He had come to expose a problem that threatened the integrity of his brand. The gym was more than just a place to work out. It was meant to be a sanctuary where every member, regardless of background, could thrive, and Jamal was determined that it would remain so. In that pivotal moment, the power dynamics in the room shifted irrevocably. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same again. Chad's face drained of color as the truth settled over him like a heavy fog. In the charged silence of the main training area, he stuttered, "Wait, you're the CEO? But you don't look—" His voice trailed off uncertainly, the sentence hanging in the air. Jamal's eyes narrowed slightly as he raised an eyebrow, a quiet challenge in his gaze. "I don't look like what? Someone who belongs here?" he shot back, his tone measured yet cutting through the murmurs that had begun to swell among the staff. The room, once filled with the usual background hum of gym chatter and clanging weights, now resonated with stunned silence. Every staff member present watched intently as Chad's arrogant facade started to crumble right before their eyes. The confident bravado that had defined him moments earlier was now replaced by a palpable fear, as if his very identity was being questioned in the most public of ways. Sensing that the moment demanded undeniable evidence, Jamal strode over to one of the gym's monitors. With deliberate calm, he pulled up the security footage, a digital record that could neither lie nor be dismissed. On the screen, grainy yet unmistakable, played out the series of incidents that had raised suspicions. The footage showed Chad in his element, ignoring black members as they approached the training area, laughing dismissively at their questions, and turning his full attention to white clients with enthusiastic, approving nods. The room fell even quieter as the monitor's images spoke volumes. The recordings were a mirror reflecting Chad's true behavior, a behavior that contradicted the gym's founding principles of inclusivity and respect. Each clip, each moment of disregard and bias was an irrefutable testament to the systemic discrimination that had been allowed to fester under Chad's watch. "So tell me, Chad," Jamal's voice rang out, steady and unyielding, "how do you think this gym should handle trainers who openly discriminate?" The question wasn't a request for an opinion, it was a demand for accountability. The silence that followed was thick with tension, as every person in the room waited for Chad's response, knowing that his words now carried the weight of his future. Chad's eyes darted around, searching desperately for an escape in the sea of disapproving stares. His bravado evaporated under the gaze of his superiors and peers. Finally, his voice broke as he stammered, It was just a misunderstanding." The feeble excuse fell flat, drowned out by the undeniable evidence playing on the screen behind him. Jamal shook his head slowly, the disappointment in his eyes mirroring the collective sentiment of everyone present. "No," he said firmly, "it was a mistake, and that mistake just cost you your job." The words echoed through the room, marking the final collapse of the world Chad had built on arrogance and prejudice. As murmurs of agreement and relief rippled among the staff, the regional director, who had been standing quietly at the back, stepped forward. His expression was a mix of regret and resolve, knowing that this confrontation was necessary to cleanse the tarnish of discrimination that had spread through Titan Fitness. The regional director's presence lent an additional air of solemnity to the proceedings, reinforcing the message that such behavior would no longer be tolerated. Chad's eyes, wide with fear and disbelief, met Jamal's unyielding stare for a brief moment, a silent acknowledgement of the irreversible turn his world had taken. In that instant, the culture of favoritism and bias that had long been an open secret in the gym was laid bare for all to see. The staff, who had endured days of confusion and discomfort, now felt vindicated and empowered, ready to embrace the change that Jamal's leadership promised. And so, in a single, decisive moment, Chad's world came crashing down, an irrevocable fall from a position built on prejudice, replaced by the promise of a new era defined by fairness, respect, and true inclusivity. Chad's departure from Titan Fitness was as abrupt as it was definitive. In front of a stunned crowd of members and staff, security escorted him out, his haughty demeanor replaced by a shell of disbelief. The murmurs of shock and whispers of relief quickly spread across the gym floor. In that charged moment, Jamal Richards stepped forward, his presence commanding the space as every eye turned to him. "Discrimination has no place in my business," Jamal announced firmly, his voice echoing off the sleek walls of the gym. His words, resonating with authority and passion, cut through the lingering tension like a clarion call for change. The room fell silent as his declaration sank in, each word reinforcing the core values on which Titan Fitness was built. For far too long, bias had been allowed to tarnish the promise of inclusivity, but Jamal's uncompromising stance signaled a turning point. Turning his attention to the remaining staff, Jamal continued with measured intensity, "I expect each of you to treat every member with respect and fairness. Any form of discrimination or preferential treatment will be dealt with immediately. We are here to build a community that celebrates diversity, not one that divides it." His words carried the weight of his commitment to fairness, leaving no room for ambiguity. The staff listened intently, their expressions a mix of remorse and determination, aware that this was a moment of reckoning for the entire organization. Determined to cement this new era of accountability, Jamal introduced sweeping changes across the board. A comprehensive diversity training program was scheduled for all employees, designed to address and eradicate the biases that had seeped into the gym's culture. "This training isn't just a formality," he explained to the gathered team. "It's a critical step in rebuilding our community on the principles of equality and respect. We must learn, understand, and actively work against the prejudices that have no place in our service." The initiative was met with nods and murmurs of agreement, a silent promise that the old ways would be left behind. In addition to the training, Jamal announced that secret audits would be conducted across all Titan Fitness locations. These audits would serve as an ongoing measure to ensure that every branch upheld the strict standards of inclusivity and professionalism that had been set. "We will have regular checks to ensure that our values are not just words on a page," Jamal asserted. "We will know immediately if any of our locations slip back into old habits, and swift action will be taken." The prospect of unannounced reviews sent a clear message. Accountability was now the watchword at Titan Fitness. As the day progressed, the transformation began to ripple through the gym. Several Black members, who had previously felt unwelcome and marginalized, began to express their relief and gratitude. Their applause, soft at first, grew louder and more resolute as they recognized the significance of Jamal's actions. For many, it wasn't just about witnessing a change in personnel. It was about seeing tangible steps taken toward a future where every individual would be valued. Their claps were not just gestures of approval, they were affirmations of hope that a more inclusive community was finally within reach. The atmosphere in the gym shifted palpably from one of tense apprehension to cautious optimism. Staff members, now under the watchful eye of a leadership committed to justice, exchanged looks of determination, aware that they had a pivotal role to play in the reinvention of Titan Fitness. Jamal's decisive actions had not only rid the gym of overt discrimination, but had also ignited a commitment to ongoing vigilance against the subtle, insidious forms of bias that could undermine the gym's mission. In that moment, Titan Fitness was reborn. What had once been a space marred by inequality was transforming into a beacon of hope and inclusivity, one where every member, regardless of background, was embraced and empowered. Jamal's bold shakeup had set the stage for a new chapter, and as the echoes of applause mingled with the sounds of clanging weights and determined footsteps, it was clear that change was not only possible, it was already underway. A few weeks later, Jamal returned to Titan Fitness, this time dressed in a sharp suit that spoke of authority and renewed purpose. The gym, once marred by discord and discrimination, now radiated a transformed energy. As he stepped inside, he noticed that the staff greeted every member with equal enthusiasm and respect. Gone were the days of hasty nods and selective smiles. Everyone was being treated with the dignity they deserved. Jamal made his way through the familiar corridors, his eyes carefully taking in the changes. He observed trainers engaging warmly with all clients, regardless of their background. In one corner of the gym, a new trainer approached a black member with a genuine smile, offering assistance and sharing workout tips. The interaction was filled with respect and encouragement, an unmistakable departure from the cold indifference that had once been commonplace. Standing near the front desk, Jamal watched this scene unfold with a growing sense of satisfaction. The transformation wasn't merely superficial, it was a profound shift in the culture of Titan Fitness. The gym, now a beacon of inclusivity and professionalism, was living up to the very ideals Jamal had always envisioned. The strides taken in diversity training and the rigorous secret audits had reshaped the environment, fostering a space where every individual felt valued and supported. With a nod of approval, Jamal commented softly, "Now that's how we do things here." His words, simple yet powerful, seemed to echo throughout the gym, reinforcing the commitment to fairness and excellence. As members and staff continued with their routines, the air was filled with a sense of unity and renewed purpose, a community coming together as one. Just as Jamal was about to leave, a curious reporter, who had been waiting at the entrance, stepped forward. With a microphone in hand and a keen expression, the reporter asked, "Mr. Richards, why did you go undercover in your own gym?" The question hung in the air, charged with anticipation. Jamal paused, a reflective smile crossing his face. "Because sometimes, the only way to see the truth is to experience it yourself," he replied. His answer was not just a defense of his actions, but a reminder of the importance of first-hand experience when confronting difficult realities. His words resonated deeply with the gathered crowd, encapsulating the essence of his mission to ensure that every member felt respected and every voice was heard. As Jamal walked out of Titan Fitness, a final shot captured a glimpse of the past. In a dimly lit corner of a low-end gym far removed from the polished halls of Titan Fitness, Chad sat hunched over, watching a television screen. The screen displayed Jamal's interview, and on Chad's face, regret was unmistakably written in every line. The once arrogant trainer now faced the stark consequences of his actions, a living reminder of the price paid for discrimination. The screen gradually faded to black, leaving behind a silent lesson. True leadership is measured not just by success, but by the courage to confront and change injustice.